The narrative around drinking is changing. I was talking to a really good client the other day who went to a 60th and he said 50% of the room easily was not drinking and it made no difference. They had an amazing night. And I want to just have a quick chat. Whether you're having a drink on a regular basis, you want to reduce your amount, you're happy with your amount, or anything else, this is by no means a judgment of your drinking habits. But if you're wanting to change them, removing the narrative that you have to drink to have a good time. And I think just being able to see that shift from when you're in your 20s to your 30s, 40s, 50s, and maybe 60s, how that equation changes over time. And I think just overall, the times have generally changed there where people are more educated, potentially, that it's having a pretty big impact on their gut, their sleep, their energy, or simply the equation of feeling shitty tomorrow morning is no longer worth it. And what they're drinking now, they're being a bit more mindful of. There's certainly the market overall has changed, right? And I think sometimes there's a real challenge in seeing a shift in industry when the products available are still very limiting. But seeing certainly, even in New Zealand now, as well as Australia, we're seeing plenty more non-alcoholic drinks come through, and the simple choice is now there, so people are taking it. And I think there's just that sort of now that the choice is available, it's kind of being interesting to see that come through. So the narrative that we're trying to break down here, Mandy, is well, I have to drink to be social, and I just don't think that's the case. And there's plenty of clients that we're working with, and I'm not saying there are plenty of clients that still go out for a drink, and we're not getting in the way of that. And we still want to be able to maximize their health with the life they want to live. But being able to see that if that limitation truly is there, that block of saying I have to have a drink, it's not the case. And I think I'd love to see where that comes to, I guess, with you personally, Mandy, and I'm happy to share as well. Certainly a recent, my last experience down at the pub for the All Blacks game, had a pretty interesting interaction there around that and sort of just what's become a new normal. I literally don't even question it. It basically doesn't even cross my mind whether they're drinking or whether I'm drinking, that sort of thing. But yeah, I want to throw it to you first. Like, what does that look like in social occasions? Does it still cross your mind? Do those conversations come up? Is there an awkward nature? What's happening?
Yeah, it is. It's one that I've sort of worked through over the years where I've never been a huge drinker, but I've definitely had points in my life where I've been like, it's the one thing I'm not going to give up. Having been in the health space for a long time, I've done a lot of things. I've, exercised and eaten and all of the different things. But the one thing I kind of held on to as a little bit of a chipmunk was I'm not giving up alcohol. I'll drink if I want to. Um, but I think with time that has changed, and it really has been that questioning of that story that we tell ourselves that we have to do this because it's the only way we can have fun, or that's the only way we can let loose, or it's the only way that we socially connect with other people, or other people are doing it. And so there's those expectations. And it's such a have. Like that is totally a story we tell ourselves that is not even true at all. And I think I'm seeing the same with so many clients where the cost to benefit ratio has shifted. And I think it is an age and a health thing. When we're young, our bodies are just a little bit more bulletproof to those things. We probably felt average back then too. We just forgot about it and pretended that we didn't. But as time goes by, you do actually feel that impact a little bit more. And I know, particularly for menopausal women, there's this massive sleep impact or this massive hot flush impact. And so the cost is just not worth it anymore. And so it does allow you to have this kind of pain trigger in a way that gets you to question that story a little bit more. Is this actually the truth? Do I actually need this? And then once you question it and you say no once and you're like, oh, no one actually cared, then you can kind of continue to build on that. And in a way, it's a little bit of a muscle, right? But I love the story of the real estate lady, Ollie, that we had in the program, who that was actually her big concern coming into the program. And she knows she was going to give up drinking. She'd made the choice she was going to do that. And she knew that there was going to be some social dynamics to navigate with that. But she just chose and she did it. And what happened over the course of the next 4 months or so was that her colleagues did notice and they started asking her about it and they actually started following suit. And I feel like it's just such a cool story, right? Because you could be just following the narrative and feeding the problem, or you can actually be the one that's choosing to make a stand and turn the tide on what doesn't need to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had that discussion a couple times, right, where they've said, "Yeah, no, I'm not drinking at the moment. I generally feel better," and the amount of times that that's turned into curiosity more than judgment of like, "Oh, really? Like, how are you doing that?" Right, and it's usually a actually really productive discussion there. But coming back to your risk to reward ratio, I think that is fundamentally it, right? We continue to do things that feel good, but there's a ratio of how good do I feel now, and then how bad do I feel for how long. And I do think that there is a bit of a shift where in your early 20s or teens, you are made rubber of magic, and you kind of bounce back. You have a shitty half Sunday, and then you're kind of good, right?
Mm.
Whereas I heard just yesterday from two or three guys, they're like, if I have a bender, I feel it for a week, like it's not just
Mm.
a day. So there's definitely an accumulation of like, no, there is a cost, and it's a longer cost that gets in the way of multiple days now. So
Mm.
that's no longer worth it. So I do think that accumulation aspect is super real. And I think just being mindful of that, if you can either be logical or emotional about it. And if you're emotional, you say, oh, yeah, but I can't. Whereas we know that's not true because logically we'll give you a bunch of reasons today. But the actual just logically, like, do I respect myself? Do I respect my time enough to actually have a really good Sunday as well, a really good Monday, whatever
Mm.
else I've got going on in my life that I want to be available for? Or am I going to ruin that on the Friday or Saturday night? Right. And I think that's worth addressing. Now, there's certain occasions that this will tie into, right? So we could look at the rugby on the Saturday night. We could look at post the mountain bike, uh, ride with the mates, whatever it might be, where those typically, at least from what I've heard recently, become the moments of drinking opportunity.
Mm.
And being in both of those opportunities on a regular basis, I'm like, like at the pub the other day, it was actually amazing how good the food was. I had like a full blown steak. I had this other, whatever the other thing was, and I actually had a dessert as well. And I'm like, I still had way less calories than like a jug of alcohol, and I thoroughly enjoyed my night, right? And I had a
Yeah.
little chuckle from my friend being like, "How are you eating a whole steak here, like in the middle of rugby?" But it was like outside of that, you laugh it off. It's not a judgment. It's just like, "Yep, I'm peculiar," and we move on. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that you do it more than once, and you just kind of you. I don't want to say become that person because again, that could have its own connotations to it as well. But I haven't seen it get in the way of the relationships I care about. I do
Mm.
know that for particular clients, they do have drinking buddies, not friends, and that can be
Mm.
really enlightening. Which is like, oh shit! Like if these guys aren't drinking, I actually don't like being around them, right? And that is quite
Mm.
confronting. We've actually heard that quite a bit. But there's in that opportunity to both either filter that friend group because it's a hell of a lot harder to stop drinking if you're in the pub with your mates every Friday, right? But at this point, this is the alcohol, I think, is always a really interesting bridging discussion between what you want out of your health and how loneliness or friendships tie in so closely to having a version of health, right? So, what are the friend groups you're around? You don't just want to be a hermit because, quite frankly, so many aspects of health come back to loneliness. Like, you can perfect your nutrition, you can perfect your workouts, but if you've got no friends, like, you're going to notice that there's a lot of things that get in the way. And I think
Mm.
being able to, and I'm not saying you need to have 10, 15 friends. I think there's actually a lot of people that if you have one or two really close friends, you're so much better than most, right? So being able to lean on that one or two people that you really trust, really connect with, and are able to do it in a way that you can go for a mountain bike, you can go for a hike, you can just go have dinner, you can do whatever where you're able to have a great time without the need for alcohol. I'm not saying you don't have to have it, but it just means that that's like I can, I can't, I'm going to have a good time either way. And I think it's a really strong filter. It's a simple, not easy discussion.
Yeah, yeah. It's changing it from being something that you choose, from being something that chooses you, i.e., you just do it because it's what you've always done, to something you actually choose. And I think deep down, the discussion is really what are you valuing the most? And I remember a guy that we worked with quite a while ago, and we had a lot of discussions about this because he was quite dedicated, let's say, to his red wine. He didn't drink a lot of it; he just drank it very, very regularly. And him and I had quite a few discussions on this. And it was me because the big shift for me with the alcohol was actually stopping drinking for a while. And then when I had it, I realized how much it impacted my mood for about 3 days afterwards, where I felt just a bit not depressed, but quite low. And it was a regular pattern of a couple of days. Like by about Wednesday, I started to feel good again. And so I had this discussion with him because he didn't think it affected him at all. It didn't affect his sleep. It didn't affect, any issues. And I was like, I want to just test you on this and actually give it a month and then have some and let's see what happens. And he came back to me after that and he's like, it was the same. I realized that once I had some wine on the weekend, it was about 3 days of just feeling this slight level of like of just feeling flat. And he'd never felt it before because he'd just normalized it. It was just always a state. And so I think it was a really nice way to highlight the true value for him because then he realized that actually what he wanted, because his highly motivated, he was active, he was healthy, all of these things. What he actually wanted and what he valued more was being able to show up on a Monday and feel really great about everything. And that the cost of that depression from a drink in the weekend actually wasn't worth it anymore. And it was kind of the thing that allowed him to pull away from the alcohol when nothing else was. And I
Mm.
think that can be the case in so many situations, right? Where it is the value. If you just have friends that you drink with and they're your friends just because you drink with them, what is the value of that? Well, what if you have friends that you get to go and do awesome things with? What if you have like mountain biking friends or hobby friends or something like that? The reason you're getting together with them is to do something awesome and actually live out your life? Or are you just kind of unliving in this state of, well, I just drink and that's what we do?
Yeah, yeah. And there's many scenarios where we've got quite a few clients in the program that are bar owners or winery owners, or they're literally around alcohol, right? So
Yeah.
we're talking through strategies on how do you still maximize these events, these dinners and things you need to be a part of, literally tasting the wine that you make, but do it in a
Mhm.
way that doesn't become detrimental to your entire week. And that's always a very interesting discussion. But where I can tell you right now, like the the last 5 discussions I've had with people that have lost north of 10 kilos from, really stripping back their alcohol, doing a proper, 30 or 60 days without it. There's two parts. One, if you can't, you must, right? Like with anything. This is not just an alcohol discussion. This is a caffeine. This is a days without exercise or days with. Like it's just lean into the thing that is your blind spot. If you say you can't do it, that's emotional. That's not logical. Being
Mm.
able to just prove to yourself that you can go without anything. You don't rely on one thing at all, right? And doing that 30 days without alcohol. If you can't do 30 days, you've got to give yourself a pretty hard look in the mirror, because I'm not saying you can't drink forever, but there should be a season where you can be disciplined enough to stop caffeine, stop alcohol, stop whatever for 30 days.
Yeah.
Where was I going with that? Yes. So with those people that have lost 10 plus kilos and they know that their reduction or removal of alcohol for that period of time, every single one of them is like, yeah, the weight loss is great, but like, man, emotions, right? Like how much have
Mm.
they come back? Like realizing how much they just became numbed. And I think flat is the right word, right? Like a low, not really feeling too much, not really being like super low, but just somewhere in the middle. And
Mm.
that nature of things is really scary when you realize how many people are just numb because they
Mm.
use the alcohol to numb. And then when they feel any form of stress, ironically, they feel stress more because the alcohol is going to make stress resilience lower. So
Yeah.
they need to numb and they need to numb and they need to numb. And I think if you give yourself that period of time, you're going to see all sorts of benefits. I don't need to go through the laundry list of benefits you will get from doing 30 days without alcohol. But for nothing else, do it for your emotional awareness and just
Mm.
become more emotionally intelligent, right? In many ways, to just be aware of that was sadness, that was anger,
Mm.
that was actually happiness. I actually felt that damn thing, right? Like bringing those emotions back, becoming a human, and having the full human experience sort of coming back a little bit, I think is actually, without getting too esoteric, quite a cool way to look at it. And just
Mm.
knowing that these have been some big old burly men that have come through and said, like, I'm feeling emotions again. It's not something I can ignore, knowing that that's not just a scientific thing, that's observational. And being in a spot that where you and I are quite unique in regards to having access to seeing so many transformations on such a consistent basis over
Yeah.
such a long period of time, it's a pretty interesting variable to look at.
It's also super interesting if you portion off a component of your habits that you're like, that's the no-go zone. I'm not changing that, which was
Mm,
me. Um, but you're interested in health. So you come into something like this and you're changing the way you eat and you move, but there's this thing you won't touch.
yeah.
What we don't realize is that that thing that we've compartmentalized is still limiting everything else we're doing. We're having to do everything else so much harder because we've got this thing that we're holding on to. And I think it's because nothing in the body works independently. It all ties in. And if you're holding on to it, it's just going to show up in all these other areas, even in your belief in your ability to do the hard thing from time to time as well, because you've said, I can't, so therefore I won't. When actually you could, therefore you could.
Yeah.
Um,
Therefore you can.
yeah,
Yeah.
one thought here, Ollie, though, because there are those scenarios, right, where alcohol is in a way being used. But what about a lot of the people I'm talking to at the moment who actually, we all know that too much alcohol is not great for us. So a lot of people have actually pulled back on kind of general consumption through the week. And I've heard this probably like 3 times this week already. I don't really drink during the week, but if I do, every other week or whatever, I drink a lot.
Yeah.
What about that scenario? Because that in a way is a different one. It's kind of like you're halfway there, but you haven't fully committed.
No, I think it's the all or nothing attitude in full force. I had a very similar scenario for me in my sort of early 20s around rowing because I knew that alcohol would impact my fitness. So I had this sort of direct judgment earlier than most people would around, like, at least for the athletes in the room, they probably kind of understand that, right? Like you put all this work in to get fitter in a particular exercise. For me, it was rowing. Yet there was also in my case, Hawke's Bay, very strong drinking culture.
Mm,
So it was either don't have any or get smashed. Like there was no in
mm,
between. And I think
mm,
it's the same as the Friday night, oh, I've slipped up, so I might as well have, I might as well have the ice cream and the burger too, right? Like it's very much just that switch that has flipped, and then oh, I've stuffed it up, and I'll take care of it on Monday. Frankly, it's a lack of ownership, but you could also look at it as this all or nothing attitude. And I think for me, seeing that there was a level of, I want to use the word judgment of like I don't want to drink because I don't want uh, to ruin the progress, but then
mm.
also a very irrational approach that, cool, if I'm going to drink, I'm going to go full send.
Yeah.
And that's going to be considerably more impactful
Yeah.
than just having a couple drinks even twice a week, right?
Mm,
So, and no part is that logical, but I think at least from knowing that behavior myself, not for a long period of time, for at least a little while,
mm,
was how I'd approached it, right? So it was like two or three times in the rowing season that you would drink, but it would be way further than you should have taken it rather
mm,
than doing it every weekend. And I think that was actually quite a strong approach in rowing
mm,
because we were trying to be healthy but we were still dumb and 19 or whatever it might have been, and that seemed to be the approach. And I think that's we see that in binge eating, or at least kind
mm,
of trying to be good all week and then kind of going off the rails in the weekend. And I think alcohol just kind of fits into the same picture. So
mm.
yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but certainly from a personal behavior, that's why.
No, it does, I think, in a way, because I think that all or nothing thing is 100% the root of that, because you might have the the knowledge that alcohol's not good, and you might have sort of set a semi-standard for yourself through the week of, "Oh, I don't really drink during the week," but then still, when the opportunity arises, you still haven't built that muscle to have any control for yourself on what you're choosing versus what you're just doing because it's the social norm. And I
Mm,
think that's the first part of the transition, if you are drinking, is to question your own standards on what that is for you and how much you will tolerate, and then questioning those stories of when you have that opportunity, which one are you choosing? Because it's actually totally okay to go for a social occasion once a fortnight where everyone else is drinking and just have one beer.
yeah,
Because
yeah, or
no
in
one's
this.
no one's forcing you to kind of take it, full send and be like, oh well, it only happens every other week or whatever. It's still a choice.
Yeah, and you communicate HbA1c or blood sugar in kind of a similar fashion, right? Like 36 isn't just slightly worse than 35, it's sort of exponentially worse in the same way
Yeah.
of like blood pressure. And I think alcohol is very much the same thing, right? Like one plus one doesn't equal two, it's like five, because there's an
Mm.
accumulative effect that if I'm going beyond that threshold of two or three, I already know that I've signed up for a bad night's sleep. But if I'm going five, six, seven, like it's not just like a little bit more, there's an exponential impact on like that
Yeah.
damage and that additional detoxification that the body needs to go through, right? And if you're in your 50s and your 40s, that's going to become, uh, not just hours, but days for your body to really recoup on, right? And that's not just the body fat and the slow metabolism and lack of mental clarity. That is this brain fog, that emotional cloud that you're not absorbing or being present or being as focused as you could be, right? And just watch another week go by. And I think that's going to be more meaningful for some than others here. But I think it's worth being aware that it just came back to your choice. And I think we've used this example with the spending standpoint, right? Whether it's spending calories or in regards to the calories you are burning, or spending money. You don't go out there and buy a burger that was $30 instead of 20 and be like, oh, I've blown my budget, so I might as well go buy the Mercedes too, right? Like it doesn't happen usually. um, but in the food example, we do that, right? We're like, oh, well, it came with chips, so I might as well blow out and have the ice cream on the Sunday too, right? And I think
Yeah.
that nature with alcohol is just check yourself because it's an emotional reaction to a judgment up front, which you beat yourself up more than you should about, and then
Mhm.
you kind of respond to it with a really illogical, well, it doesn't matter anyway, and I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I both understand it and don't understand it, but it's an interesting behavior pattern that is at least there. And the biggest part, there's three key parts that I just want to hit home, Andy. First one is we're recognizing that more people are seeing the cost to benefit ratio and no longer seeing it worth it, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the if you have a drink or two, you can have a good night and you can also be good on Sunday. If you flick that switch and you go all out and you try ignore the judgment or you just kind of lose self-control, is it worth you feeling bad for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday as well?
Mm.
That's totally on you, right? But the big part here that I think is the strongest way of putting it is if you want to feel healthy, but you say it doesn't matter in the moment, then stop kidding yourself. Be
Mm.
honest with yourself in the moments that matter, right? Like if you want to be healthy, it's not about uh, if someone's bringing you a salad every meal and you've got a personal trainer for each workout and you've got someone tucking you in at bed, like all of those things are going to be very easy to manage. But
Mm.
if you're traveling and you need to find a healthy option, or it's bucketing outside and you need to go get your workout in, those are the times that really challenge you on like your
Mm.
character of whether you're going to be healthy or not. And if you're a drinker and that's an environment that you've been in, like that's your crux. That's your challenge point of whether you decide to get better or worse. And I think there's just a either choose and be an adult about it and choose to be better, or don't complain about it and live the life you want to live, right? Either way, remove the shooting all over the floor, the judgment of why it should be different if your actions aren't in line with it. So that's the kind of frank way of putting it. The second one I think is that just realizing it's a lot more than just kind of metabolism and sleep here. Like there's this whole emotional cloud that we're really looking at. And I just got off a kickoff call, obviously with an amazing group of new clients that have just joined the program, like genuinely like really cool caliber of clients this month. And one of the things that came through, like 80% of the room highlighted that nutrition or training or particularly exercise was something they wanted to improve, but they really identified like the behind the scenes mindset component that needed to be addressed first.
Mm.
So it was the how do I fit myself on a regular basis? How do I nail that first 20 minutes of the day? Like, how do I have that conversation with myself to actually put me in my day? Like, that sort of stuff is really strong. And if you're
Mm.
pushing this as a way of like, oh, yeah, my weight's not that bad or X, Y, and Z, like, cool. Like, live your life at 60% and just like miss out on the other 40. That's totally fine if that's what you want to do. But if you
Mm.
want 100% out of life, stop kidding yourself and make the change.
Yeah.
And then yeah, the last one is like I need to have a drink to be social. Like that's just BS. Like we've just got so many examples now, so many amazing clients that are literally the light of the party. Like there are a couple of cases in our retreats and things, right? Like zero alcohol and people were very silly. But the options there in regards to some more non-alcoholic, like for a long time, and in certain places it's still the case where it's either it's either alcohol or just a bunch of sugar, right? Like you're either having a beer or you're
Yeah.
having a Coke. And
Yeah.
I think being able to see that there's more options coming has been helpful. And in my case, I've got my little Barker's syrup and a carbonated water that I basically known to bring to different events now, because it allows me to still have that drink. I still haven't had anyone ask me like, except for once, and that was fun because I could explain what it was. What's in your drink? It was just like you were still part of that group, and as long as you weren't sitting in the corner judging yourself, you can still have a great time, right? So you highlighted it before. A lot of that lack of fun you have from not drinking is usually internal. Nobody else cares,
Yeah.
and the less fuss you make, the more that typically works out fine.
Yeah. I think it's just always a good idea to check ourselves out and make sure we're not the one that's perpetuating the story to justify the thing we don't want to do.
Mm.
Like, are we perpetuating the story of, oh, this is what everyone does, or this is what's expected in a social situation, just because we're not ready to make the change? Because otherwise, if we are, we're literally keeping ourselves stuck. And like you said, stop kidding yourself that it's actually important because you're choosing not to, or we're choosing not to. So it is an interesting one, but it's one of those ones where you just try it once, see how it feels. Like build the muscle, right? When you first start working out, it feels a bit weird, but keep going.
I'd push it back on that. I'd say don't try it once. Give yourself a month. Like anyone can do a month.
Yeah,
And I've
yeah,
seen, I've seen so many people say they can't prove to themselves they can, and then they like never go back, right? Or when they do go
yes.
back, they just have a way better filter of like, no, I know enough is enough. Like I've just proven myself I can, and that's fundamentally confidence at the end of the day. Is you can, if you say you're going to do something, you follow through on it. And I think the reason I
Yeah.
push back on once versus 30 days is you're going to go through weakness and strength there. And I think being able to give yourself that sort of proven timeline of you can have a drink if you've had a great week, but if you had a really shitty week, can you still get away with not having a drink, right? Like, how can you find those
Mm.
other coping mechanisms and go for a walk or just have a conversation with your partner or do something else that feels a little bit more productive, not even productive, just rewarding in a different way that isn't, glass alcohol. And I think being able to make that shift, even for 30 days, will give you a better perspective whether you go back to drinking regularly or whether you stop for another period of time. It's just the context that you're not able to give yourself if you don't do it. And I think
Yeah.
that's a discussion to be had regularly with clients. And yeah, I think for the most part, uh, there is a lesson to be learned regardless, right? Like if your industry, your how often you drink, all the rest, to just prove yourself you can and get rid of that blind spot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, that's what I meant. You just said it better.
Cool, team. Look, we're going to leave that one there. We've had a couple conversations around alcohol. It was really cool to see that the conversation we did recently around caffeine was really popular as well, and just being able to talk through all these funny little societal behaviors that we have around, going out for the coffee date, going out for the extra drink, and if we're trying to make changes to our life, sometimes those sort of social norms can kind of become confronting. But I promise you, we've got an example for every single one of the things that you're going through. And the cool thing about the clients we work with, they inspire us every day. We're by no means perfect, but we're able to see the trickle down effect of these decisions over a long enough time horizon that really reinforces, what we do and how we do it as well. So if you can take a little fraction of that as well and bring that to your narrative around drinking or people around you that you care about. Mike brought it up for me yesterday, talking around 50% plus of these people at the 60th having an amazing time, and you didn't even know it until you checked their drink and it was zero alcohol beer or wine or whatever it might have been. There's always a little ninja way to work around it, but if you want to choose your version of health, don't hide behind the social norms that really aren't there when you choose to change them. Other than that, team, hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again soon.